Chapter 1523. With his hands clasped behind his back, Xueqi asked in a deep voice, "Do you think the Phoenix Emperor is right or wrong?" When Hu Xiaofan and the others heard the question, they were all stunned without exception. Obviously, no one had expected Xueqi to ask such a question at this juncture. What was the point of asking such a question at such a dangerous time? Xueqi said, "Everything that the Phoenix Sovereign has said seems to be the truth now. There's not a single word of falsehood in it. I believe that at this point, even someone as wise as him would not think of lying. If that's the case, is he right or wrong?" Hu Xiaofan scratched his head and said, I feel that no one is absolutely wrong, whether it is the Phoenix Emperor, the Demon Emperor, or the emperors of the demon race. There is no pure right or wrong, and it is just a difference of personal standpoint. From the beginning to the end, the Phoenix Emperor has been carrying out his own goal, especially when he has been entrusted by his elders, father's last wish, and the common hope of his people for thousands of generations. Even though he has used the Demon Emperor, he has given a lot of compensation. At this point, Hu Xiaofan coughed, feeling a little embarrassed. After all, the Phoenix Emperor was a great villain, and he wondered if he would be punished by his elders for saying so. Yun Xiaoxin frowned and said solemnly, "I think the Phoenix Emperor is wrong. No matter what his original intention is, how great his fundamental goal is, and how imperative it is, that is his own business. Forcing it on others shows that his heart is not in the right place, and yet he is acting so righteously. This is already a big mistake. Others may not want his so-called compensation. The so-called giving is just his side of the story. Everything was forced upon us by him. It's all just sophistry." Sun Mingxiu and the others nodded in unison. Sun Mingxiu continued, "The Phoenix Emperor's words seem to be reasonable and convincing, but at the end of the day, he is the winner now, the one with the upper hand. If he fails, this matter will be brought up from a third party's mouth and traced back to its source, and it will be nothing more than an unsuccessful scheme of a schemer. As for the youthful aspiration, the arduous journey, the fearlessness, the creation of all conditions, for the sake of dreams, for the sake of the clan's trust, for the sake of father's dying wish, for the sake of the pinnacle of martial arts, it's all just words piled up." Sun Mingxiu smiled faintly and came to a conclusion, saying, "The Phoenix Empress is actually more suitable to go to the humans' imperial court and become a courtier politician. But now, he had violated the fundamental principles of morality. The way of the Jianghu, the way of brothers, the way of the heavens. All of them have been violated." He turned to look at Hu Xiaofan and warned, "Hu Xiaofan, your thoughts are dangerous. If you continue to do things your own way, perhaps the Phoenix Empress will be a warning to you. Let me ask you, if you think that the Phoenix Emperor is innocent, and it's only because he has a different standpoint, will you also deceive and use me, Chenghang, Xiuxin, and the other brothers and sisters in a righteous manner if you encounter the same thing one day? We will be doomed eternally, and you will rise to the top in a single bound, standing high above everyone else? Wasn't this also a choice? In the future, if you treat our families and descendants well and make up for it, should we no longer resent you?" Hu Xiaofan was drenched in cold sweat, his face pale as he said anxiously, "I wouldn't dare. I was just affected by the Phoenix Emperor's words. I lost my mind for a moment. I'm wrong." Seeing that everyone was staring at him with cold eyes, Hu Xiaofan finally lowered his head, his face pale. He had only heard the Phoenix Emperor's words and assumed that the Phoenix Emperor was not wrong. However, when he heard Sun Mingxiu use them as an example, how could he not know that his train of thought had gone astray and was gravely mistaken? Xueqi nodded in relief and said, "I don't need to tell you this. As you grow more experienced in life, you will naturally understand it. However, now is the moment of life and death for the human race. We may not be able to return to the Palace of Nine Supremes after this battle. Whether there's a future is even more uncertain, so there are some words that I'll say to all of you in this little gap. The so-called standpoint, the so-called choice, remember that there are things to be done and things not to be done. When it comes to the critical moment, no one is allowed to have the thought that as long as there's life, there's hope, there's hope. Don't say anything about leaving some seeds behind. It will only make people despise you and make me sigh that I've failed in teaching my disciples." Xueqi's expression was as calm as still water, but his tone was extremely determined. "The bound of universe's last line of defense is right under our feet. If we can't defend against it, we'll be doomed eternally. Once the war starts, the disciples of the Palace of Nine Supremes can only press forward bravely and fight to our last breath. We either win or be destroyed. Do your best until your last breath. That's all. All the disciples of the Palace of Nine Supremes were solemn as they bowed to receive the instruction, replying in unison, "Yes, Master." On the other side, the Phoenix Emperor's accumulated emotions had been completely vented. Feeling extremely relaxed, he looked at Yun Yang with a smile. "Supreme Cloud, what do you think?" Yun Yang said faintly, "I admire your painstaking attainments and 10,000 years of planning. Unfortunately, if I were Long Yutian, I would still not understand you. Everyone has their own point of view, and everyone has their own standpoint. Your choice is based on what your heart desires, and no third party can interfere with the thoughts of others. The main reason I'm listening to you talk about the past is to satisfy my curiosity. I have no obligation to help you distinguish right from wrong," Yun Yang said with a faint smile. "Now that I think about it, what you've said is no different from what the Dragon Emperor has said." The Phoenix Emperor was taken aback and asked in surprise, "There's really no difference. Other than a different perspective and a different feeling, there's really no difference." Yun Yang said, "Phoenix Emperor, you haven't disappointed me after all. Even though it's inevitable that I lean towards you emotionally, you're not lying about everything that happened in the past. I'm willing to give you another word of respect for this." The Phoenix Emperor said proudly, "I, the Phoenix Emperor, have always done things with a clear conscience. Everything else is insignificant." Yun Yang said with a chuckle, "Everything else is insignificant? Regarding this, I would like to ask another question. It's fine if you killed Long Yutian to fulfill your original intentions, but you clearly had the ability to change the universe just now. Why did you allow Emperor Rock and the others to self-destruct? Do you not feel the slightest bit of sincerity towards them?" The Phoenix Emperor's expression was indifferent as he said casually, "The reason why I watched them fall was largely due to you, Supreme Cloud. Emperor Pang and the others were clearly heavily injured, and it would be difficult for them to come out again without 10,000 years of recuperation. Yet, they were able to recover greatly in such a short period of time and step onto the battlefield again. Unless they reached an agreement with the omnipotent Supreme Cloud and betrayed the demon race, how could they do this? They were destined not to be of one mind with me anymore. What harm was there in dying? Secondly, I carried too much of the apocalyptic strategy's power then. It was difficult for me to control it alone and I couldn't even channel it out. You humans had long avoided fighting me. So you were in danger of self-destructing then?" Yun Yang was hit with a sudden realization. That's right. The power level was far above my estimation. Not only was it difficult to bear, but I couldn't vent it either. Over time, I'm afraid it would really lead to my death. The Phoenix Emperor sneered. Yet, they chose to self-destruct at that time, wanting to blow me up. They didn't know that to me, it was a heaven-sent opportunity to resolve my current crisis. I used the power of their self-destruction to offset most of the power that exceeded what I could bear, helping me integrate. When I couldn't bear it anymore, they betrayed me. When I was about to self-destruct, they did it. Everything happened by chance, allowing me to recover and evolve. Yun Yang could not help sighing. So this was the truth. The Phoenix Emperor had already reached the most critical and dangerous moment at that time. Emperor Rock and the others should not have come at that time, and he had not sent them any news. Yet, they had arrived at the battlefield at that time and learned about the Demon Emperor and Phoenix Emperor. Fate really made fools of people. The Phoenix Emperor smiled. Supreme Cloud, do you understand now? This is Heaven's will. It's Heaven's will that allowed me to break through. It's also Heaven's will that allowed me to become a ruler. From now on, whether it's the human realm or the realm of demonic beasts, there can only be one Supreme. The Phoenix Emperor laughed. That's me. I'm the Supreme. Supreme Cloud, you can be the Bound of Universe's Supreme Cloud or the Bound of Universe's Supreme, but you're destined to never become the Supreme of this world. Now that things have come to this, it's proven that even the heavens are helping me. Supreme Cloud, what else do you have to say? Do you still want to struggle in vain? Do you want to put up a meaningless resistance? Yun Yang leaned on the oceanic divine staff and smiled faintly. Victory and defeat, life and death, win and lose, profit and loss. In the end, it's just a game of life. My life hasn't ended, and my life hasn't come to an end. Naturally, this game hasn't ended yet. On the opposite side, banners fluttered in the wind. A large number of demon race troops gradually emerged from the far end. The waves were still clamoring and roaring, but they could not break through the low hill. Yun Yang and the Phoenix Emperor turned to take a look, sneers of understanding appearing on their faces. It was obvious that the Sea Emperor was afraid. Of course he was afraid. He was afraid of being used as cannon fodder by the Phoenix Emperor. He was even more afraid that it would be the same as before, where the Sea Clan would be the main force, and millions of Sea Clan beings would perish. The Bloody Soul Mountain was gone anyway. If the Sea Clan wanted to come in, they could come at any time. There was no need to rush. It was better to let the demon race be the vanguard and face the last and strongest line of defense formed by the human powerhouses. Especially when the Oceanic Divine Staff was still in Yun Yang's hands. Even if the Sea Clan really came in, as long as Yun Yang wielded the staff, the situation would still be peaceful. Whether it was the Phoenix Emperor or Yun Yang, the Sea King's intentions were clear to them. On the human side, the mountaintop was filled with fighting spirit. Today was the day to fight to the death. Yun Yang and the Phoenix Emperor were still facing each other in the sky. Neither of them moved. Below them, the Palace of Nine Supremes combat force, under the lead of Dong Qitian and the others, quickly crossed the battlefield and charged into the demon race like a giant sword. To everyone's surprise, the human side attacked first and counterattacked the demon race. Yun Xiaoxin's white robe fluttered as she took the lead. She unleashed the move of, "So what if I slaughter the world?" sweeping through the crowd of demons like a hurricane, leaving only broken limbs behind her. Hu Xiaofan let out a thunderous roar and followed closely behind Yun Xiaoxin, killing in all directions. Bai Yexing, with a cold face, and Lin Xiaoro, who was beside him, moved together. The Demiurge Flawed 10 split into 10 directions, like 10 furious dragons, leading the Palace of Nine Supremes combat force into the demon race's army with the might of the leader of the dragons. Dong Qitian, on the other hand, sat in the center, taking care of the demon race from all sides. Tens of thousands of disciples rushed forward like a tide and fought the demon race's combat force. The remaining experts of the East Celestial Palace, West Heaven Holy Palace, and the other two palaces were slightly off guard by the sudden attack of the Palace of Nine Supremes and entered the battlefield a little later, but none of them showed any weakness. Even those human experts who were seriously injured and only had one last chance to fight rushed forward without hesitation. The mystical beasts of the Holy Land of Tian Fa occupied the entire battlefield on the right, charging forward without any regard for their own safety. A large number of mystical beasts in the sky and on land began to prepare, ready to launch another wave of self-destruction at any time. On the demon race's side, the third echelon of combat force, countless experts, gradually arrived on the battlefield. Seeing that the human race was launching a massive counterattack, they rushed forward without waiting for orders from their superiors and joined the battle. It was only a single collision, but hundreds of thousands of living beings were turned into dead souls. The 3,000 miles of defense line built by Yun Yang was engaged in battle almost everywhere. Dongfang Haoren and the other three masters, along with Shangguan Lingxiu and Ji Lingxi, were divided into 6 directions, each guarding one side to stabilize the army's morale. No one paid any attention to the Phoenix Emperor in the sky. They only found the Serpent Emperor, the Monkey Emperor, and the others to fight each other. The Phoenix Emperor belonged to Yun Yang alone. No matter what, Yun Yang had to restrain the Phoenix Emperor. Otherwise, this battle would be completely meaningless. A mocking smile appeared on the Phoenix Emperor's face as he tilted his head to look at Yun Yang. "You want to stop me? Restrain me? Do you think you can?" Yun Yang sneered. "I think I can. What does the newly ascended Demon King think?" The Phoenix Emperor smiled. In the previous battle, the demon race has undoubtedly suffered great losses, far more than the human race. However, I have broken through the Blood Soul Mountain's momentum and have long been established. Now that the Dragon Emperor, Rock Emperor, and Tiger Emperor are dead, the demon race only has one voice. Once the army enters the bound of universe, there will be no turning back. Now, the demon race's third wave of combat force has arrived. Even if you humans have the upper hand in terms of power, as long as I go down, the situation will be reversed in time. But do you dare to act rashly? We humans will definitely be the winners of this battle between the two races. Yun Yang's eyes shone with an intimidating light. You humans might be able to win the current battle. After all, the demon race's top-notch experts have died and I'm the only one left, and I'm still being held back by you. The Phoenix Emperor closed his eyes and paused for a moment before murmuring, "But as long as I'm still here, the demon race's sky won't collapse." We'll still win this battle between the two races. What's the point of a temporary victory or defeat? Half of Yun Yang's deific consciousness was focused on the deific consciousness space. He saw that the chi of karma was still roaring and engulfing. Emerald's emerald green body was trembling and swaying violently, and the 7 leaves had all turned dark green. On top of it, a small sprout was trying its best to drill out bit by bit. Now, a sharp little horn was revealed. A massive force was already stirring, as if it would rush into the deific consciousness space at any time. Although the sprout had just emerged, it had already proven the chi of karma. It was enough. At the same time, it also meant that the endless divine art was about to ascend to the 8th stage. The boulder in Yun Yang's heart crumbled with a single thought, turning into a calmer and calmer one. He sneered, "Phoenix Emperor, do you think that you can look down on this world and all living beings just because you've obtained the power of Apocalypse Tome and improved your cultivation base? Before you defeat me completely, I advise you to keep your restless thoughts to yourself. Otherwise, you'll have to find an objective reason when you're defeated by me." The Phoenix Emperor guffawed as if he had heard something funny. "Shameless boasting. Supreme Cloud, do you really think that I dare not attack you? Do you really think that I care about the divine oceanic staff in your hand? I've already made it clear just now that I'm dawdling with you just to wait for my army to come. Although it's only the reserve force of the 3rd echelon, everything can still be done with me. Now that the army has arrived, will I still dawdle with you here and give you a chance to linger on?" The Phoenix Emperor's mocking laughter rang through the 9 heavens. Down below, the humans who heard the Phoenix Emperor's arrogant laughter paled. Had it come to the final juncture after all? Everyone understood the current situation. Due to the Phoenix Emperor's stunning performance, its power had risen to a level that surpassed the pinnacle of this world. It had even ascended to the legendary realm of the Stellar Realm. Now the humans could only rely on Supreme Cloud, who wielded the divine oceanic staff, to hold back the Phoenix Emperor, the invincible expert, which was why they had the upper hand now. Once Supreme Cloud was defeated by the Phoenix Emperor, the current situation would only be a mirage that would vanish in the blink of an eye and cease to exist. As Yun Yang and the Phoenix Emperor engaged in a heated conversation, Emmy's 8th leaf had already grown half a foot long. Its long, green horn seemed to be dripping with dew. The endless energy in the air had all gathered in one spot, hastening the growth of the horn. However, no matter how fast it grew, a process was still needed. It was a process, and it needed time. As for the Phoenix Emperor, it was obvious that it was ready to strike, not planning to give it any more time. The Phoenix Emperor let out a long laugh and soared into the sky. He reverted to his original form, turning into a huge phoenix that covered the 9 heavens. The fire of nirvana that covered a larger area burned brightly, almost burning the heaven and earth. His eyeballs alone were almost the size of a house. He glared at Yun Yang in the air and hollered, "Supreme Cloud, you're the bound of universe's Supreme Cloud, and I'm the Demon Emperor. Come and fight me. Let's see who's the supreme in this world between us." Yun Yang smirked. "Your Majesty, Phoenix Emperor, you're very calculative. You've long known the gap between us, but you still say such pompous words, forcefully crowning yourself with the title of supreme in this world after your victory. What a brilliant tactic. Do you want me to offer my admiration for the 3rd time?" The Phoenix Emperor's laughter shook the heaven and earth. "I don't care for your admiration anymore, because you're already a dead man in my eyes. You're no different from trash. At most, you're worth making use of. I'll step on your corpse, the bound of universe's unrivaled expert, and rule the world. Only then can I truly accomplish the supreme feat of the demon race, the sea clan, and the human race." He howled into the sky. "Between heaven and earth, I'm the supreme. From today onwards, in the human cultivation base hierarchy, the ranks above the supreme are abolished from now on." Amidst his howl, the blazing flames burned black holes in the void as the Phoenix Emperor's massive body swooped down towards Yun Yang. A torrential heat wave descended from the sky. They were still tens of thousands of feet from the ground, but thick smoke was already rising from the ground. The Phoenix Emperor's murderous intent had been triggered, and his spear was pointed straight at Yun Yang. He had to kill Supreme Cloud. Chapter 1525. As the Phoenix Emperor reverted to its original form and attacked with the power to burn the world, a boundless pressure came crashing down from the sky. Yun Yang was at the center of the target and felt the immense pressure. He felt as if the entire world was leaving him with a swoosh. He was the only one left between heaven and earth, fighting against this boundless force. A feeling of absolutely irresistible rose from his heart. Of course, Yun Yang would not resign himself to his fate. With an angry roar, the purple jade flute was the first to strike, forcefully countering the Phoenix Emperor's attack. Both sides had only made slight contact, but the purple jade flute was almost completely ineffective. With a loud bang, it was sent flying back. Yun Yang was not discouraged. The divine edge had turned his saber into a sword. So what if he slaughtered the entire world? The technique of slaughtering the entire world was unparalleled and its effect was obvious. As the sword light traveled, it pierced through the Phoenix Emperor's massive body like a rainbow shooting through the sun, creating a large transparent hole that was dozens of feet wide. However, the transparent hole only lasted for an instant before the Phoenix Emperor's body recovered. With a loud bang, the blade of Heaven's will was sent flying back. The purple jade flute's power and the divine edge were both defeated. Faced with the Phoenix Emperor's flawless divine body, it could not be damaged at all. This was out of Yun Yang's expectation as well. The Phoenix Emperor's laughter rang through heaven and earth. Supreme Cloud, there's a difference in power levels between you and me, like heaven and earth. Even if it's a marvelous technique that can damage my physical body, it can't shake my foundation. Use the Oceanic Suppressing Staff. Only with this staff is your last chance. As you wish. Yun Yang did not hesitate. With a shout, he soared into the sky with the Oceanic Suppressing Staff. As the Phoenix Emperor had said, the Phoenix Emperor's current cultivation base had already surpassed the pinnacle of this world. The difference between it and Yun Yang was an entire realm, like the difference between a saint and a half-saint. A half-saint's attack was enough to damage a saint's physical body, but the saint could heal it in the blink of an eye, rendering the half-saint's efforts futile. It was similar to Yun Yang's situation when he faced the Phoenix Emperor. As for Yun Yang, who was wielding the ocean-suppressing divine staff against the Phoenix Monarch, it was just like how Yun Yang had used the purple jade flute to face off against the supreme saint and half-saint experts of the three heavenly palaces. Using the immense power of the divine weapon to boost his side's lethality, he was able to fight against those of a higher level. In spite of this, the divine staff of ocean-suppressing staff could not be as invincible as the purple jade flute had been. Firstly, the staff did not belong to Yun Yang, so it was difficult to wield it freely. Secondly, the Phoenix Sovereign was confident that as long as the staff did not hit her directly, it would not be of much use. The divine staff of ocean-suppressing staff glowed with a misty yellow light as Yun Yang waved it. At this moment, Dongfeng Haoren and the others all forgot about the battle below. They all couldn't help looking up at the incomparable battle in the sky, the battle of the century. He could not take his eyes off her. Indeed, the outcome of this battle between these two people was too important. Although they knew that Yun Yang's chances of winning were slim, they still harbored a sliver of hope. Because there was no other way. Moreover, the Phoenix Emperor had no other opponent in this world. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Yun Yang soared into the sky with the divine staff of ocean-suppressing staff in a heroic manner, as if he wanted to finish the battle in one fell swoop. On the contrary, the Phoenix Emperor who was swooping down from the sky was rather wary. Not only was his movement not as aggressive as it was initially, it was a little more sluggish. There was even a lack of decisiveness in his response. Those who were watching the battle were the pinnacle experts of this world. Naturally, they had sharp eyes. So how could they not see that the Phoenix Emperor was holding back? Once Yun Yang's divine staff of ocean-suppressing staff retaliated, the Phoenix Emperor would evade immediately and not face the attack head-on. In the next moment, however, Yun Yang swung his arm to attack. The Phoenix Emperor instinctively wanted to tear the space apart to evade, but he realized that while the divine staff of ocean-suppressing staff was in Yun Yang's hand, it was only in his hand. Yun Yang's wave was a bluff. There was no actual movement. Supreme Cloud. The Phoenix Emperor guffawed. You're exhausted. How dare you expose your weakness? How sad. Yun Yang snorted coldly and waved his arm again, as if he was about to attack. However, the Phoenix Emperor did not move this time. His gaze fixed on the divine staff of ocean-suppressing staff. If the divine staff of ocean-suppressing staff did not move, he would not move either. As expected, Yun Yang still did not attack with the divine staff of ocean-suppressing staff. It was still a bluff. The Phoenix Emperor felt relieved that he had seen through Yun Yang's capabilities. Just as he was about to taunt him, something unexpected happened. Yun Yang waved his arm again. A palace suddenly and inexplicably fell from the sky. In an instant, the sight was filled with gold and jade, illuminating the endless mountains and rivers. The palace appeared almost out of thin air, enveloping the Phoenix Emperor entirely within it. With a loud bang, the palace expanded rapidly and landed on the ground like a falling meteor. It trapped the Phoenix Emperor firmly within it. At this moment, even Dongfang Haoren and the other pinnacle experts were sent flying from the ground. At such a time, Yun Yang only wanted to succeed with a single strike. How could he care about the severity of his attack? Before the people who were sent flying could be surprised, they were already shocked by an even greater shock. The glorious palace that had enveloped the Phoenix Emperor had expanded to dozens of miles in size. There was a huge plaque on the palace's entrance, with 3 words written on it: Residence of 9 Supremes. There was no need to explain. This palace must be Yun Yang's natal artifact. It was just that it had never made a move before, not even appearing in front of anyone. Perhaps, only Dongfang Haoren and the other 3 rulers had seen the Residence of 9 Supremes palace. When the Residence of 9 Supremes was promoted to an upper-class celestial luck banner, they had seen the form of a small house and had speculated about its power. Now that their speculation was confirmed, they could not help but be overjoyed. Yun Yang still had a trump card. The rest of the human experts were struck with the same realization. So, this is the real reason why Yun Yang named his sect the Residence of 9 Supremes. Yun Yang had always had the Residence of 9 Supremes. This was the real Residence of 9 Supremes. The Residence of 9 Supremes enveloped the Phoenix Emperor. Within the Residence of 9 Supremes, the Phoenix Emperor's incessant roars of rage could be heard. When the Residence of 9 Supremes landed on the ground, the massive Residence of 9 Supremes was shaking violently at all times. It was even moving and leaping, causing the ground to rumble incessantly as countless cracks spread far and wide on the ground. Obviously, the Residence of 9 Supremes could not completely trap the Phoenix Emperor. This was something that everyone could see. After the Residence of 9 Supremes made its move, Yun Yang immediately kept the ocean-suppressing divine staff away. Like a flash of lightning, he descended from the 9 heavens. The divine edge in his hand moved rapidly, turning into a giant saber thousands of feet long. He charged into the demonic army and began a massacre. The saber light shimmered, shrouding thousands of feet in its radiance. How could Yun Yang not know that although the Residence of 9 Supremes' power was extraordinary, more powerful than the purple jade flute and even the divine edge, it was still not enough to trap the Phoenix Emperor. At most, it could only trap her for a moment before she broke free. The Phoenix Emperor's current level was too high. To be honest, if he had not run out of tricks, Yun Yang would never have used this last trump card. The Residence of 9 Supremes was the memory of him and his brother's reunion. In Yun Yang's heart, its symbolic meaning was greater than its practical value. Using it to trap the enemy, especially against an expert like the Phoenix Emperor, might cause the Residence of 9 Supremes to be permanently damaged. This was not what Yun Yang wished to see. However, he had no other choice. What Yun Yang needed now was only time. The only thing he needed was time. As long as he gathered enough karmic chi, he would be able to fight at the very least. Unlike now, he was only a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Time. Only time. Even if it was a single breath, a single inch. At this moment, the endless divine art was sufficient for a breakthrough, but the karmic chi was still slightly lacking. The 3rd echelon of the demonic race had opened up a path for Yun Yang, giving him another chance, or rather, a turning point. Yun Yang moved like a bolt of lightning, landing at the densest point of the demonic race's army. His saber turned into a blinding radiance, and in the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of saber energy surged out in 3 different directions. As the saber light passed by, countless heads leaped up and hung high in the air, not falling for a moment. Yun Yang, however, did not seem to see it. Still holding his saber, he continued to move forward like a god of death, covering tens of thousands of feet with each move. Swinging his saber, the first 7 styles of saber truth, Destiny Blade, were unleashed like bolts of lightning. Wherever Yun Yang went, it was as if the sun had exploded and a meteor had exploded. Bursts of ghostly wails and howls rang out one after another. The yellow spring path spread out abruptly, and the gate of yin and yang opened abruptly. The sea of blood was boundless, and the mountain of bones towered above. Yun Xueqi and the others stared in shock at the mountain of corpses and blood in front of them. The enemies whom they had fought desperately but failed to kill just now were annihilated by Yun Yang's saber as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Moreover, it was a large number of them. What kind of power was this? What kind of cultivation base was this? Behind Yun Yang and to his left and right were scenes that looked like hell, but he did not stop. Moving at lightning speed, he was already hundreds of thousands of feet away in the blink of an eye. Everywhere it passed, heads flew into the sky everywhere it passed, and it seemed like an endless wave that rose and fell. For a moment, broken limbs flew in the air, and before the blood could sink into the ground burned by the Phoenix Emperor just now, it had already gathered into a river. In less than 100 breaths' time, Yun Yang had rushed all the way and covered a distance of 70,000 feet. The number of souls killed by his saber had suddenly increased by more than 1,000,000. It was at this moment that an unprecedentedly loud bang rang out behind him. With a loud boom, the entire continent seemed to be shaking. Yun Yang felt a jolt in his heart. He hurriedly swung his saber for the last time, tearing the space apart and returning to his original position. The moment he broke out of the spatial rift, he didn't even look back. The divine will blade turned into a gale and lightning again, like a torrential torrent of saber light, rushing toward the Phoenix Emperor who had just broken out of the spatial rift. He laughed loudly. "Phoenix Emperor, this saber is to welcome your escape." The residents of 9 Supremes, which had turned into countless fragments, converged in the air, turned into a stream of light, and re-entered Yun Yang's deific consciousness space. The residence of 9 Supremes was the magical artifact that Yun Yang had placed his mind on, and it was connected to his life. Although its power was limited by Yun Yang's cultivation base, as long as Yun Yang's origin was not exhausted, there was room for it to be rebuilt. Just like now, when it was violently blown up by the Phoenix Emperor, it seemed to be broken and completely destroyed, but it was only severely injured. It returned to Yun Yang's deific consciousness space, but it needed a long time to recuperate and could not be used again in a short time. Although the residence of 9 Supremes was blown up by the Phoenix Emperor, it had bought Yun Yang more than 100 breaths' time, which was very precious and important. When the residents of 9 Supremes returned to Yun Yang's deific consciousness, a furious Phoenix Emperor was left behind. "You're courting death." The Phoenix Emperor had just broken free, and what welcomed him was a torrent of saber light. Without thinking, he raised his hand and swung his sword. The sword in the Phoenix Emperor's hand was condensed from the fire of Nirvana, and it was this weapon that had blown up the residence of 9 Supremes just now. Now, it clashed with Yun Yang's saber light once again. Another loud explosion rang out, and the Phoenix Emperor staggered backwards. Every step she took created a large hole in the ground, and then countless cracks spread out in all directions along this large hole. Yun Yang's condition was even worse. With a loud cry, he spat a mouthful of blood and tumbled upwards, rolling endlessly towards the sky. A gust of wind and cloud seemed to respond to his summons, shrouding Yun Yang within it. The dense karmic energy of killing over 1,000,000 demon clan creatures within 100 breaths formed a faint gray stream of air that could almost be seen by ordinary people, disappearing into the sky at an extremely fast speed. The Phoenix Emperor howled and soared into the sky, tearing the wind and clouds apart. He stood tall in the sky, but he could not see Yun Yang's current location or any traces of his whereabouts. He could not help shouting angrily, "Supreme Cloud, come out!" With a glance, he could see the entire situation. How could he not see the tragic sight of the demon army? It was a hellish sea of blood and mountains of corpses, hundreds of thousands of feet in circumference. The neatly arranged saber marks were like the result of a single move. The Phoenix Emperor was instantly enraged. He had only been sealed for 100 breaths' time at most, but Yun Yang had actually created such a tragic massacre. Tens of millions of lives were lost in an instant. "Supreme Cloud." The Phoenix Emperor laughed angrily. "Your concealment technique is impressive. I couldn't find you in my haste. So what if you're good at it? You can kill the demon race. Can't I slaughter the human race?" Before his words echoed in the air, the Phoenix Emperor stopped searching for Yun Yang in the sky. Instead, he turned around and charged towards the human race with a nirvana flame that could burn heaven and earth. It had to be said that the Phoenix Emperor's action had caused the current situation to take a sharp turn. The Phoenix Emperor's ability was terrifying, far above Yun Yang's, but Yun Yang had deific consciousness space, and manifestation powers. He could not face the Phoenix Emperor head-on, and he had many trump cards that could save his life. It was impossible for the Phoenix Emperor to kill Yun Yang completely. The residence of 9 Supreme's mystical treasure earlier was proof. But what truly terrified Yunyang was that the Phoenix Emperor had abandoned him and charged towards the human race's defense line. It was almost foreseeable that once both sides came into contact, even if the human race's defense line still had 4 rulers, Ji Lingxi, Shangguan Lingxiu, and the elites from the 9 Supreme's palace, it would all be useless. The human race would collapse instantly with heavy casualties. This was something that Yunyang absolutely did not want to see and had to avoid. Just now, Yunyang had used the residence of 9 Supremes to trap the Phoenix Emperor for 100 breaths' time, because he felt that he had no better way to deal with the Phoenix Emperor. The advancement of the endless divine art was imminent, and it had coincided with the arrival of the third echelon of the demon race's army. That was why he had decided to take the risk and attack the demon race's army. Unfortunately, things did not go according to plan. The endless divine art had not been successfully upgraded. Instead, it had made the Phoenix Emperor realize that attacking the human race's defense line was the best strategy at the moment. At this moment, even if Yunyang had appeared to intercept it, the Phoenix Emperor would not have changed his course of action. After all, being entangled by Yunyang was not as worthwhile as Yunyang taking the initiative to intercept it. He could even eliminate a large number of human elites, so why not? Seeing that the situation had taken a turn for the worse, Dongfeng Haoren and the others had decided to step forward and stop the Phoenix Emperor with their lives. Just as they were about to self-detonate and die, something unexpected happened again. Yunyang roared. "Hold him back, Gigi!" With a sharp chirp, a tiny fiery red figure appeared from thin air. With a speed faster than lightning, it charged towards the Phoenix Emperor, who was engulfed in the raging flames of nirvana, before Dongfeng Haoren and the others could. In an instant, the fiery red Gigi charged into the flames of nirvana. Then it burst into flames. Ji Lingxi gasped in shock, her eyes wide and round. This tiny thing that had followed Yunyang since he was in Tianxian continent had dived into the flames of nirvana like a moth to a flame, burning along with the flames. This was not surprising at all. The flames of nirvana were said to be invincible. Otherwise, it would not be a big deal for Gigi to burn itself. What made everyone's eyes widen was, in the flames of nirvana that claimed to be able to burn anything, Gigi's tiny body did not burn into nothingness. Instead, it grew bigger and bigger. The terrifying flames of nirvana were like the best nutrients for its growth. It was obviously absorbing the flames of nirvana into its body as it burned, making it part of itself. The tiny body grew bigger as it absorbed the flames of nirvana. The Phoenix Emperor was shocked by the change as well. He had long known of the existence of this strange bird and had interacted with it before. He had even thought of devouring it when the opportunity presented itself. But the situation in front of him was still far beyond his expectations. The Phoenix Sovereign's flame of nirvana now was different from what it used to be. It was the flame of nirvana that had been enhanced by the boundless power of the Apocalypse Tome. The Phoenix Sovereign had endured the demonic Sovereign's self-detonation attack previously, and its shattered body had mostly relied on the enhanced flame of nirvana. Even the instantaneous recovery of the Phoenix Sovereign's injuries when it fought Yunyang just now was partly due to the flame of nirvana. However, the flames of nirvana did not burn a single bird to death. Instead, it had become nutrients for its growth. It was unbelievable. The Phoenix Emperor was puzzled and could not help but focus more attention on Gigi. As the two of them were closer to each other, the Phoenix Emperor unconsciously noticed something that no one else had noticed. As it absorbed the flames of nirvana, Gigi's appearance gradually changed. Its ugly body, which did not have many strands of hair on its body, gradually became plump. A chicken's head, a swallow's jaw, a snake's neck, a turtle's back, and a fish's tail gradually appeared. The feathers all over his body grew out bit by bit like rising flames. On his head, the first 3 feathers that grew out turned into a fluffy crown, like a crown, emitting a strange red luster. The long feathers that grew on its tail and wings naturally formed strange patterns. As they swayed in the wind, they looked like rising flames that danced in the air. Logically, Gigi absorbing so much nirvana's flames was not only illogical, it was also harmful to the Phoenix Emperor. The Phoenix Emperor should have kept the flames of nirvana long ago and not give Gigi the chance to absorb them. He should have continued attacking the human race's defense line. However, what was strange was that the Phoenix Emperor had no intention of keeping the flames of nirvana. It was stunned for a moment before it allowed the flames of nirvana to be consumed. It did not do anything else. She only stared at Gigi without blinking for a moment. It stared at Gigi, who was dancing gracefully in the Nirvana's flames without blinking. The expression on its face gradually became dull. Slowly, the color of Gigi's body changed from a fiery red to a riot of colors that reflected off each other. Originally, everyone felt that the true form of the phoenix was the most beautiful bird in the world. Colorful lights shone brilliantly, looking magnificent and magnificent. However, everyone who saw the colorful feathers on Gigi's body came to the same conclusion. Compared to the colorful radiance of the Phoenix Emperor, Gigi's riot of colors was even more beautiful and gorgeous. Although the feathers of the Phoenix clan were colorful and beautiful, that was under the situation where there was no comparison. Now, with Gigi's natural feathers, the colorful feathers of the Phoenix clan were even more messy, and the difference between them was clear. Just by standing in the air, Gigi was already filled with the aura of a king, as if it was the best. That kind of indescribable elegance and grace made one dazzled, and an impulse to worship him arose in one's heart. Although Gigi had yet to fully take shape, its splendor was already on display. How was it ugly? It was the most beautiful bird in the world. As Gigi grew larger, the speed at which it absorbed the Nirvana's flames became faster and more ferocious. The Phoenix Emperor, who had been watching Gigi's changes, looked more and more fanatical, more and more infatuated. The way he looked at Gigi was like he was looking at a peerless treasure. Nothing else in this world could enter his eyes. The Phoenix Emperor was not the only one who fell into such a state. Countless experts of the Phoenix clan stared at Gigi in the air with infatuation in their eyes, their faces filled with fascination and yearning. Finally, the Phoenix Emperor's mind cleared and he blurted out, "Phoenix? This is a real phoenix." He looked at Gigi with his mouth agape and roared in disbelief. How did a real phoenix become Supreme Cloud's pet? Everyone who heard this felt a roar in their heads, and a feeling of dizziness filled all their senses. Phoenix? This ugly little bird that had always been by Yunyang's side was actually a real phoenix. The Phoenix Emperor had spent so much effort to activate the strategy of annihilation and planned this shocking plan for 40,000 years. His ultimate goal was to return to his origin and transform into a pure-blooded phoenix. Looking at the little fellow that was happily and comfortably swimming in the sea of fire, everyone felt that their brains were not enough to process what was going on. The Phoenix Emperor only felt that at this moment, her mind was completely blank. How could it be a phoenix? How could it be a real phoenix? Then, what is that? The Phoenix Emperor did not know how to address the phoenix. He stammered and suddenly asked loudly, "Then, Phoenix, why are you in this world?" Gigi lifted its head and glanced at him in an unusually arrogant manner. It then lowered its head to tidy the beautiful feathers that had just sprouted on its body. "I can't be bothered with you. I'd better absorb this pure energy quickly. It's rare that there's such an idiot here. I'm absorbing his energy with all my might, but he doesn't retract the flames of Nirvana, allowing me to absorb it instead. He's so stupid, such an idiot. Besides, how would I know what he's asking? How would I know why I'm in this world? It was Master who brought me here." The Phoenix Emperor said angrily, "Why aren't you talking? Answer me." Gigi lifted its head elegantly and looked at the Phoenix Emperor. It opened its mouth and called out, "Gigi!" The Phoenix Emperor almost tumbled down from the sky. This ancient divine beast actually didn't know how to speak? How did it say that? Vaguely, the Phoenix Monarch suddenly recalled that as a top-notch divine beast, the purer a being was, the more difficult it was for the Phoenix Monarch to grow up. This was especially so when they were still in their infancy stage. They didn't have the ability to speak, and even their basic battle prowess was mediocre. They weren't much different from a newborn chick. In fact, they weren't even as adorable as a newborn chick. Recalling Gigi's previous appearance, it was like a feathered phoenix was not as good as a chicken. Then, this little phoenix in front of it was still in its infancy. The Phoenix Emperor stared at Gigi, its eyes suddenly shooting out a look of greed. In this world, there was no true top divine beast, the Phoenix race. The so-called Phoenix race were all those with impure bloodlines. Which meant, in this world, there was only this little fellow, the only pure-blooded Phoenix bloodline. Although the bloodline in its body was pure, its abilities were low. At least it was something that it could touch. If it swallowed it, and absorbed its bloodline for its own use, then wouldn't that be? A wish of 10,000 years would come true in a day. The more it thought about it, the hotter it felt. The covetous light in his eyes could no longer be concealed. Gigi had been paying attention to the Phoenix Emperor's movements, so it naturally sensed the Phoenix Emperor's sudden evil intentions. However, it was not surprised. After all, they were originally enemies. It was already very stupid and kind for the Phoenix Emperor to only feel enmity and malice towards it now. It flew up in the flames of nirvana and turned its head to look at the Phoenix Emperor. A strong aura emanated from its body. It was an innate aura that belonged to a superior divine beast. The Phoenix Emperor felt a sense of weariness that came from the bottom of its heart. It instinctively wanted to kneel down and submit. It was as if its soul had been intimidated and suppressed. However, he immediately flew into a rage. If it was an adult divine beast in front of me, I would have accepted it. However, you're just a young phoenix that relied on my nirvana's flame to become strong, and now you actually want to turn around and threaten me? The Phoenix Emperor howled at the sky in rage, its aura increasing abruptly. Then, with a swift movement, it grabbed at Gigi. With a flash of fire, Gigi was already thousands of miles away. Gigi's combat power was not easy to judge, but its speed was second to none among Yun Yang's pets. Even Yun Yang himself could not match up to it. Sensing the Phoenix Emperor's evil intentions, it was already ready to strike. Now that it was a pure-blooded phoenix fledgling, its speed had naturally increased. Even if the Phoenix Emperor launched a surprise attack, it would still be futile. Gigi. Gigi's cries were filled with rage. The knowledge that came from the script source told him that the silly girl in front of him was an exiled, abandoned fellow with an impure bloodline. Yet, such a fellow actually dared to attack the noble Phoenix Emperor? This was a great humiliation. This was a crime of great disrespect. I'll punish you. The Phoenix Emperor pursued relentlessly, arriving in front of Gigi in an instant. Its murderous intent did not diminish but increased instead. Gigi extended its wings angrily and rebuked, "How dare you attack me?" The Phoenix Emperor ignored it, its large palm locking the space between heaven and earth. With a swoosh, it grabbed over and pecked at the Phoenix Emperor with a furious cry. Poof! The Phoenix Emperor grunted as a small hole was pecked into its large palm. A piercing pain shot through the Phoenix Emperor. It looked over in shock. This hand that could even block Yun Yang's divine edge could not withstand a peck from Gigi's tiny beak. Moreover, its fire of nirvana could not heal this little bit of damage. Was this the damage that originated from the pure bloodline of its own race? The Phoenix Emperor was inexplicably shocked, but the injury it had suffered was extremely light. Even though it was difficult to heal instantly, it was not a serious problem. Instead, Gigi's peck made it dizzy from the recoil of the giant palm. It cried out, "Gigi! I can't beat it. I can't punish it. I have to run quickly." With a swoosh, a red line traveled thousands of miles away, circling the entire battlefield at an indescribable speed. The Phoenix Emperor pursued relentlessly, its speed increasing and its aura growing more terrifying. Gigi cried out in panic. Master! Master, where are you? You asked me to come out and stop it, but I've already stopped this fellow a few times. Why aren't you coming out yet? I'm about to be caught. This despicable bird. You actually want to eat me, Gigi? Dream on. Gigi did not know that Yun Yang had already entered a mystical state and did not have the time to care about it. Yun Yang, who had no time to care about anything else, was at the delicate moment of his cultivation base advancement. The 8th stage of the endless divine art that he had been looking forward to was finally completed under the watering of the sea of karmic chi that surged in like a tidal wave. It had broken through. Emmy's 8th leaf grew from a sharp sprout in one go. As it grew, it turned into a gigantic lotus leaf in the blink of an eye. Emmy, which had been crying out anxiously earlier, had stopped now, returning to silence. It stood quietly, scurrying upwards with all its might. What was it doing? Leaping up. Emmy's entire plant was trembling. Finally, the 8th leaf of the lotus of endless fate bloomed perfectly. From a tender green, it quickly turned into a dark green. The thick leaf fluttered like a huge umbrella. And at the center of the leaf a tiny tender tip appeared again just like before. It was the embryonic form of the 9th leaf. A large amount of karmic energy was still surging into the 9th leaf, but it was obvious that no matter how much karmic energy surged into the 9th leaf, the 9th leaf wouldn't react quickly. After all, the karmic energy required for the 9th leaf to grow was 10 times that of the 8th leaf. In other words, if the final war between humans and demons were to be launched another 10 to 20 times, With billions of lives being slaughtered each time and Yun-yang having to do it himself, only then could the ninth leaf bloom. That was only a possibility. After all, the demon sovereigns were the pinnacle experts of this world who had grown up after tens of thousands of years. Without them, no matter how great the final war between humans and demons was, the quality would be greatly reduced. Be it in terms of scale, quantity or quality, the karmic chi would be greatly reduced. Fortunately, the eighth leaf that had bloomed now was enough to deal with the current crisis. As for when the ninth leaf would bloom, that was something to be discussed in the future. On the leaf, a thick aura quietly left and circled once in the air before it flew back into Yun-Yang's deific consciousness like a tired bird returning to its nest. Yun-Yang only felt a wave of dizziness before a lot of things were added to his mind. At the same time, an endless amount of spiritual energy poured into his meridians in a way that resembled the Milky Way pouring down in torrents. The previous round of killing and the exchange of blows with the Phoenix Sovereign had depleted his mystical chi that had recovered to less than 40%. His meridians and dantian, which were almost depleted, were instantly filled to the brim by the influx of spiritual chi. The series of twinkling stars in his meridians dimmed before they began to twinkle and expand rapidly. Then, Yun-Yang felt his meridians shatter. The shattering could be considered a shattering of cognition, but it was not as if they had truly ceased to exist. They had transformed into another form of existence. The tiny stars swam in his body, following the circulation route of the endless divine art. Each time they swam, they would digest and absorb an endless amount of energy before they were filled up again. The cycle repeated itself. A few lines of incantations appeared clearly in his mind. Endless life, the secret of primordial chaos. Yin and yang, life and death, the meaning of creation. Heaven is heaven, earth is earth. The 3,000 ways of Tao from today onwards. Waves of enlightenment rose in Yun-Yang's heart. Following his epiphany, he entered a state where he forgot himself and everything else, transcending heaven and earth. He had no idea that his meridians were shattering and reforming over and over again. He didn't even know that at this moment, what was rushing into his meridians was the eternal creation chi that countless cultivators had dreamed of since ancient times. His meridians were occupied by the stars, circulating ceaselessly. His entire body was like a miniature universe at this moment. Countless stars, rising and falling as the sun rose and the moon set or shifted, floated within him. Each star was filled with exuberant vitality. Mountains, rivers, mountains, suns, moons, stars, all sorts of heaven and earth treasures, spiritual herbs, and treasures appeared in his deific consciousness space. The entire space of his deific consciousness gradually extended as if there was no end to it. Endless chi of creation, congenital chi, primordial chi, surged into the space of his deific consciousness like a tsunami. Slowly, the air cleared up, the sky grew higher while the ground grew thicker. The shape of a small world was taking shape bit by bit, and in an extremely short period of time, it was approaching perfection. During this period of time, Yun-Yang understood many things, or rather he understood too much. Why did humans have to live and die? Why did they have to have emotions? Why did they have to have a world? Why did they have to have everything in heaven and earth? Why did they have to have the sun, the moon, and the stars? Why? He had found the answer to all these questions. Or rather, he had obtained the answer during this process of ascension. He had floated in the river of time. He seemed to have witnessed too much and experienced too much. In just a short moment, he seemed to have experienced the entire process from the beginning of heaven and earth to the end of time. So, this is the path of martial arts. So, this is my world, the world that I'm about to create. Thoughts after thoughts rose in Yun-Yang's mind. So, this is the truth behind the so-called, one flower, one world. So, there's a complete universe in everyone's body. A complete world. Everyone's body is a unique treasure. It all depends on whether you can dig this treasure out and develop it. This is the Tao. The beginning of man, the beginning of Tao. The Tao is with me, I am the Tao. Following the breakthrough of his cultivation method and understanding of the path of cultivation, Yun-Yang's cultivation base grew rapidly in a terrifying manner. Every moment, it grew exponentially, but he did not feel uncomfortable at all. It felt like everything was going according to plan, as if everything had been prepared for a long time. All he had to do was wait for the final step, and everything would be a smooth sailing. With the breakthrough of the endless divine art to the 8th stage, the 8 leaves appeared in their most complete form, in an extremely perfect state. Yun-Yang's divine edge underwent a fundamental change as well. A grayish glow melted into the divine edge in an almost mystical way. As the divine edge absorbed the grayish glow bit by bit, it kept changing its color. It flickered hundreds, thousands of times in an instant. However, it soon returned to its original state. When the divine edge's transformation was over, no matter how carefully one observed, one could not see any change in the divine edge or any difference from before. But once he started using it, he would immediately know that the sharpness of the blade of heavens had reached an extremely terrifying level. Compared to before, it was at least a world higher. It was a difference that was even greater than the distance between heaven and earth. Yun Yang heaved a long sigh of relief as the thing he had been anticipating and waiting for the most had finally arrived. The divine edge, the eighth form. It was still the same style and two styles. Boundless Tao. Saber-Cleave's primordial chaos. It was finally here. In his mind, a person wielding a long saber danced with it. Streaks of cold lightning seemed to point to a never-ending path of Tao. As for the other saber strike, it sliced a chaotic world in half. Above was the sky, and below was the earth. Although it was only a moment, Yun Yang felt that he had been cultivating these two saber forms for hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years in this mysterious atmosphere. He slowly opened his eyes, yet to his astonishment, he noticed that he was still in the state of a cool breeze. Hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years had passed, and he was still at the core position of the final battle between the human and demon races, and he was at a position not too far away from the Phoenix Emperor. Yun Yang reverted to his true form with a shake of his body and looked down with his eyes wide open. The first thing that came into view was Ji, who was fleeing frantically, and the Phoenix Emperor, who was pursuing it relentlessly. The distance between the two was shrinking bit by bit, gradually closing. Ji changed its direction constantly, but as the chase went on, its trajectory was gradually grasped by the Phoenix Emperor. Not only was it unable to widen the distance between them, but the slight pause every time it changed its direction caused the distance to shorten even more. Ji cried out in agony, its voice heart-wrenching. "Help me," Yun Yang frowned. This was because he noticed that the Phoenix Emperor's terrifying speed and terrifying strength were actually mediocre in his eyes. Could it be that he had improved too much? He appeared in the air and stood tall. With a single thought, he was already behind Ji and in front of the Phoenix Emperor. Seeing that its savior had appeared, Ji stopped running. With a long cry, it turned into a ray of red light and landed on Yun Yang's shoulder. One of its wings stretched out, pointing at the Phoenix Emperor like a finger as it chirped at Yun Yang. It was obviously complaining. Ji meant that it was furious. "Master, this despicable lowly creature actually dares to chase after me. This is treason. He deserves to die. Teach him a lesson for me quickly." Yun Yang could not help but chuckle. Ji was still chirping like a bird, but Yun Yang could already understand what it was saying. He held Ji in his palm and chuckled. "I didn't know that you were born so pretty. To think that you've always been so ugly. There were a few times when I wanted to throw you away." Ji proudly chirped, "Ji, I am a phoenix. A real phoenix. A pure-blooded Phoenix Emperor? How could it be ugly? How am I ugly? So what if you're my master? It's your eyes that have a problem. Throw me away? Try throwing me away. I'll hit you with my butt." "Phoenix? You're actually a phoenix?" Yun Yang was stunned. "You're a phoenix, a pure-blooded phoenix. How did you end up in Tianxian continent?" Yun Yang did not understand. That fellow Dong Tianling had actually given him a phoenix back then? Furthermore, it was such an ugly phoenix? Recalling how this fellow had looked like a bald chick in boiling water, Yun Yang's mind was a mess. There was a reason why a featherless phoenix was inferior to a chicken. Recalling how Ji had behaved back then, Yun Yang felt as if he had just been enlightened. It was truly inferior to a chicken. Chapter 1526. As for why Ji would end up in such a low-class realm like the Tianxian continent, it was incomprehensible and unbelievable. Ji gesticulated for a long time before Yun Yang shook his head. "Since you're confused yourself, there's no need to explain. I understand. I understand that you're confused." Ji lowered its head dejectedly. It really did not understand. Yes, it was a phoenix, a mythical beast. Why did it end up in such a low-class realm like the Tianxian continent? This was too. Not to mention anything else, his parents were too careless, right? However, It did not know that Yun Yang truly understood. Tianxian continent was full of mysteries. There was more than just Gigi. There were also the 9 Supremes brothers and itself. Which one of them was ordinary? Yun Yang was increasingly convinced that there was another reason behind his unclear birth and parents' ignorance. Yun Yang lifted his head and looked at the Phoenix Emperor in front of him calmly. He said softly, "Your Majesty, heaven's will is unpredictable, and heaven's will is even more treacherous. Your plan is destined to fail." The Phoenix Sovereign snorted but did not answer. The aura exuding from Yun Yang made him feel as vast as the sea and as elusive as the ocean. It was as if he was not facing a person, but a heaven and earth, or perhaps a deity of heaven and earth, enigmatic and unreachable. He took a cautious step back and said in a low voice, "Is that so?" He was mumbling inwardly. Yun Yang had stopped him in a flash just now, but he did not see the other person's trajectory clearly. How did Yun Yang come? How did he appear? Even if he had focused most of his attention on the Phoenix fledgling, he should not have been so careless. Unless Yun Yang's ability was at the same level as him, or even higher, then he would not have been able to notice it. At that moment, Yun Yang gave him the feeling that he had been standing there since the beginning of time, as if he had just flown over and crashed into him. Why was there such an eerie feeling? What was going on? Was this still Yun Yang? Half a quarter of an hour ago, he was still no match for me, barely able to withstand a blow. He could only fight me with so many magical weapons. But now, when I faced him, I actually felt that I was insignificant, so insignificant that it was disproportionately small. The Phoenix Emperor frowned and suddenly asked in a probing tone, Your Supreme Cloud?" Yun Yang chuckled. "What do you think? Wasn't the Phoenix Empress the wisest person in the demon realm? Could it be that you can't distinguish whether I'm real or fake?" The Phoenix Emperor stared at Yun Yang in disbelief. Feeling Yun Yang's aura that was as majestic as a mountain and as vast as the ocean, his expression grew increasingly grim. At this moment, he felt like he was dreaming. Everything in front of him was so surreal. It had only been a blink of an eye, but Yun Yang had already reached such a level. He was like a completely different person from before. It was not enough to describe the difference as heaven and earth. And all of this was happening right before his eyes. His gaze was filled with caution and suspicion as he stared at Yun Yang. It was only after some time that a thought surfaced in his mind. Could Yun Yang have used some arcane method to burn his life's potential? Using the method of destroying himself to raise his cultivation? It had reached a level where it could threaten him. If that was the case, Yun Yang would not be able to last for long. Any arcane method that overdrew one's strength would definitely have a flaw that could not be sustained for long. What was more, Yun Yang's ability had increased tremendously in the blink of an eye. The Phoenix Emperor's initially bewildered gaze focused once more and grew even sharper. There was even a confident smile on his face. "Supreme Cloud, I wonder how long can you maintain this state? A jaw sticks time, a cup of tea's time, 100 breaths time, or even shorter?" Yun Yang replied faintly, "That's hard to say. Your Majesty, the newly ascended Demon Emperor, why don't you give it a try yourself? Only by putting it into practice will you know. Can your guess and my answer be taken into account?" "Of course I'll give it a try." The Phoenix Emperor let out a long howl and soared into the air, reverting to his true form in mid-air. With a loud boom, his body grew to a terrifying size that covered the entire sky once more. Although he had said that he would give it a try, the Phoenix Emperor was not careless. The current state was the Phoenix Emperor's maximum power. Not only had he activated his cultivation base to its limit, but he had also added the power of the apocalyptic tome. In short, all of his power, strength, and cultivation base had been mobilized by him. At this moment, the heat in the air could almost burn a hole in the blue sky. A body that carried such a tremendous amount of power was naturally enormous to an extent that was unimaginable to ordinary people. In the eyes of the spectators, the current Phoenix Emperor's figure was almost as majestic as the Blood Soul Mountain from before. Just one eyeball was already the size of a small hill on the ground. As it hovered in the air, it spoke in the human language. "Supreme Cloud, why don't you fight me one last time and decide the outcome of this decisive battle?" Before his words of challenge had even faded away, he had already swooped down. The scorching heaven's scorching flame also displayed an unprecedented might, as if it was cheering for the Phoenix Emperor as it swooped down along with him. The spectators around them, even the pinnacle 4th-level Saint Monarchs, felt the pressure and found it hard to breathe. Their hair stood on end. The Phoenix Emperor was still tens of thousands of feet away from the ground. It was imaginable that if the Phoenix Emperor was allowed to descend like this, all the living beings on this battlefield, be it humans, demons, or oceanic races, would be burned to ashes. There would only be a limited number of them who could survive. This strike was the ultimate power. Even the Phoenix Emperor himself could not control its power. Yuanyang howled and sprung up. He did not evade, but faced the Phoenix Emperor's ultimate strike head-on. As Yuanyang rose into the air, his body began to expand rapidly, turning into a mountain-like giant in the blink of an eye. The divine edge in his hand also turned into a 10,000-foot-long blade for the first time. Yuanyang stood in the air with an indomitable spirit and swung his saber. As the strike was unleashed, the cries of ghosts and deities could be heard. The boundless heaven and earth gathered in one spot at this moment, returning to a state of chaos. The saber was the brightest lightning in the chaos. Or rather, it was the only light in the chaos, splitting the boundless chaos apart with a single strike. This was the last form of the 8th style of the divine edge that Yuanyang had recently comprehended. Facing the Phoenix Emperor's ferocious attack, Yuanyang used this technique without hesitation. Saber cleaves primordial chaos. This was a technique that split heaven and earth, a technique that showcased the origins of mankind. It was related to the beginning of time, Panga's breaking of primordial chaos, and from then on, the primordial was divided into two. The vast saber light lit up the sky, illuminating most of it. It was as if the turbid heaven and earth had really been split into two. The Phoenix Emperor howled in pain. Half of its wing was sliced off by Yuanyang as the two sides collided. The divine edge had not been able to harm its body even after thousands of slashes, but now, it was the same saber. It was only a single slash, but the entire wing that covered the sky had been sliced off. As the wing left its body, a boundless rain of blood poured down. The droplets of blood were still in the air, but they had already turned into droplets of solid glass-like flames. Gigi was delighted to see its prey. It leapt out and transformed into an extremely fast stream of light. All of the blood was devoured by it like a whale, sweeping it clean. The giant wing that was falling to the ground was kept into Yuanyang's deific consciousness with a wave of his hand. He dared not let the wing fall. If it did, the spectators below, especially the Palace of 9 Supreme's disciples, would die in large numbers. Saints already possessed the ability to be reborn from a single drop of blood. What kind of mystical power would the Phoenix Emperor, whose cultivation base had advanced further, possess? At the very least, it should not be difficult to turn a fallen part of its body into a clone. If this half of the wing turned into a clone of the Phoenix Emperor, it would be troublesome. It was better to keep it in his deific consciousness space and suppress it. After all, as Yuanyang's endless divine art had broken through to the 8th stage, his deific consciousness space and Emmy's level had also increased. It was enough to suppress the Phoenix Emperor's body. With a flash, Yuanyang did not have to tear the space apart intentionally. He stepped through the void as if he did not care about the distance and came to the Phoenix Emperor's left. With a light palm strike, he landed it squarely on the Phoenix Emperor's chest. The power of the 5 elements erupted abruptly. The Phoenix Emperor grunted, its massive body tumbling in the air from the strike, rolling hundreds of thousands of feet away. Only then did it spit out a mouthful of blood like a waterfall. Amidst the blood were countless pieces of internal organs. There were even some sparkling objects that exuded a rich energy wave. It was the Phoenix Emperor's internal core. The Phoenix Emperor's internal core had been shattered by a light palm strike from Yuanyang. The Phoenix Emperor's massive body suddenly disappeared in the air. Just as Yuanyang was about to give chase, the space before him shimmered and the Phoenix Emperor, who had reverted to his human form, appeared before him. Right now, he was dressed in an imperial robe, but he was missing a shoulder. In spite of this, he stood proudly in the air, still elegant and graceful. There was not even a trace of blood at the corner of his lips. His face was slightly pale, but there was no sign of him being severely injured. His eyes stared fixedly at Yuanyang. After a long time he sighed softly and said, "Supreme Cloud, your heaven's chosen one indeed. Your heaven's chosen one." He smiled and slowly said, "Tens of thousands of years of planning, success in one day. But it was launched when you grew up. To lose in your hands like this, it is the will of heaven. Even though I am not convinced, and even more unwilling, I have nothing to say." Yuanyang smiled but did not say anything. He knew that he did not need to say anything now. Right now, it was just the Phoenix Empress pouring her heart out in her final moments. Everyone, including himself, just needed to be quiet listeners. The Phoenix Emperor was silent for a moment before saying, "How did you do it? I don't wish for everything to be heaven's will. Give me a reason to leave in peace." Yun Yang spoke slowly. "There are internal and external reasons for your defeat in this battle. Part of it is due to your negligence, and part of it is due to luck on my part. All in all, I've already reached the critical point of breakthrough before this battle. As for this battle with you, many internal and external reasons have combined to facilitate the opportunity for my breakthrough. Do I need to explain in detail?" The Phoenix Emperor was slightly taken aback before he smiled in realization. "I see. That's how it should be." "Ha ha ha," Yun Yang said faintly. "Also, although your plans have all succeeded, in the end, you've been deserted by everyone, and you're all alone. How many of those brothers who fought alongside you are left now?" "Phoenix Emperor, we humans pay particular attention to our original intentions and not forgetting our roots. As for the demon race, could it be that you can ignore these most precious emotions? The moment you went against the flow, you've already been destined to fail." "That makes sense." The Phoenix Emperor smiled, a little embarrassed. He turned slowly and looked at Gigi, who was still in the form of a stream of light and was still chasing after its own blood. There was an indescribable sense of envy in his eyes. Looking at the devastation on the ground, countless people stood dumbfounded, looking at the humans, demons, and sea clansmen in the air with a hint of disappointment in their eyes. He said with a hint of sadness, "When you first entered the demon realm, I noticed that you seemed to have the aura of my avatar. At that time, I guessed that the avatar I created, the avatar that went out of control, was probably destroyed by you. I guess then that you're the chosen one. Then, my clone in the Bound of Universe was also destroyed because of you. I was even more certain that if the plan couldn't be completed soon, the demon race would probably be destroyed in your hands. Until the day before the apocalyptic strategy, your cultivation base improved by leaps and bounds, reaching the level of a saint and even the pinnacle of this world. I already had a bad feeling. I was secretly beating the drums, seizing the time to act recklessly. I wanted to be ahead of you, to possess the ability and cultivation base that surpassed the pinnacle of this world. However, I never thought that the plans of man would always be inferior to the plans of heaven. In the end, I still couldn't beat you. Heaven's will, this is heaven's will." The Phoenix Emperor laughed and said, "I've planned for 43,000 years for this earth-shattering plan. All for the sake of conquering the world and conquering the Bound of Universe, to bring the human race, the demon race, and all living beings in this world under the jurisdiction of the demon race. Only by achieving this goal will I be able to borrow the power of the world annihilation strategy to reach a higher level, to reach a level that surpasses this world. Only then will I be able to transcend this world and cross the starry sky to search for my race. This is a merit and also a capital. It's also the long-cherished wish of the Phoenix race for tens of thousands of years. I didn't expect it to be all for naught in the end. The living beings of the mortal world shouldn't fight against heaven, nor should they go against heaven's will." His eyes were filled with envy as he looked at the saber in Yun Yang's hand. "I heard that this saber of yours is called the Divine Edge." "That's right. I've been working hard to seek the Tao of Divine Will all my life, wanting to be blessed by heaven's will. However, what awaits me is actually a divine edge. Half of my body, an inner core, and 45,000 years of cultivation base have all been destroyed by the divine edge. Man fights against heaven and seeks his own destruction. This saying isn't false." The Phoenix Emperor laughed into the sky. "Ha ha ha. Destiny. This is destiny. This is the heavens." Yun Yang was silent for a moment before he asked, "Your Majesty, if the Bound of Universe were to be unified in your hands, what would you do? Annihilate the human race?" The Phoenix Emperor smiled sadly. "What's the point of saying all this now? The history books are only meaningful to the victors. Even if I have great ambitions and boundless ambitions, what's the use?" He was lost in thought for a moment before he finally said, "Since you've asked, there's no harm in saying it. After all, you've defeated me and I'll perish in your hands. You have the right to know. I've originally planned that after unifying the Bound of Universe, the human race will still be the human race and the demon race will still be the demon race. Even if the Bloody Soul Mountain will cease to exist because of the strategy of annihilation, I'll naturally set another boundary between the human race and the demon race when I reach a higher level. Of course, under my rule, the demon race will live in a more tolerant environment, but I have no intention of annihilating the human race. I won't even suppress them. Regarding the issue of the war between humans and demons, I've discussed it with the Fox Emperor and Bai Yi of the Feline clan a long time ago. The three of us have the same opinion. Humans and demons coexist, protecting and balancing each other. Only then can there be long-term peace. To me, there's a deeper thought. Among the humans, there's someone who once became the ruler of this world. Then, he's the heaven and earth's favorite, favored by heaven's will. If I annihilate the human race, I'll definitely be punished by heaven. Therefore I won't do it. After I've conquered the bound of universe, I'll give relative peace to both races so that the desire to become stronger will never be extinguished in order to survive and fight against each other. In this process of balance, there will definitely be countless geniuses who will stand out and create new legends. When this mutual promotion reaches a certain level, this continent will inevitably give birth to new experts of the starry sky. In fact, it won't just be one or two, but many experts of the starry sky will shine with each other. And at that time, as the person who unifies the world, I will inevitably become the leader of this world, the light of all worlds. As more and more experts of the starry sky walk out from here, and these people were once my people, my subordinates, the foundation for me to dominate the starry sky in the future. I'll first bring them back to the Phoenix clan, and then conquer the myriad heavens and realms, and the conquest will continue. As for how long the conquest will last, it naturally depends on when I die, and when that time comes, it will naturally come to an end. If I can continue to live and continue to become stronger, then I'll either completely conquer all the worlds in the myriad heavens, or create a world of my own, create a heaven and earth, and reach the ultimate expert like Lord Monarch. Only then will I be qualified to meet Lord Monarch, and face the rising legend of this world. I want to tell him that although I've gone against your will, I've still reached my current position in the end. I'll also tell him that you banished the demon race to a place like the demon plane back then. That was your bias and also your mistake. Because the demon race can also walk out, and I'll prove it with reality. After that, I might still fight with Lord Monarch, and challenge this ancient legend. If I lose, there's nothing else to say. Any words of a loser are false and meaningless. But if I win, I'll tell him that the winner has the right to make the rules. It was so in the past, and it's still the same now. The Phoenix Emperor looked into the void, his eyes filled with disappointment and yearning as he spoke. He seemed to have already walked into the world he had imagined, and was advancing towards his final goal. More than 40,000 years here is just my starting point, my cornerstone. I've calculated everything. I've calculated human nature, I've calculated all schemes, I've calculated all living beings in the world, and even you, a variable, are still within my calculations. However, plans can never keep up with changes. No matter how much planning you have, you're still an ant in the world. No matter how resourceful he is, no matter how meticulous he is still just an ant in the world. The Phoenix monarch shook her head mournfully. I said that I could calculate everything in the world, but in the end, I couldn't avoid being overthrown by the will of heaven. The greatest reason for my failure is but the will of heaven. Yun Yang sighed softly. It had to be said that Yun Yang had always had a faint sense of admiration for the Phoenix Emperor before him. Just like Mr. Nian, whose cultivation base was unparalleled and whose mind was unparalleled. A deep and far-sighted plan, the wisdom to control the world, the ability to stir up the winds and clouds. After tens of thousands of years of painstaking planning and scheming, his heart would occasionally soften, but as long as he could be ruthless, he could persist for tens of thousands of years without wavering. Such a person was more than just an ambitious and ruthless person. It would not be an exaggeration to call him a peerless hero of a generation. In fact, the existing terms were far from being able to describe it. It was a pity. It was just like what the Phoenix monarch had said. Heaven's will is like this, and heaven's luck is not up to par. In the eyes of anyone else, how could tens of thousands of years of planning be inferior to a person who had cultivated for more than 20 years? This was simply unimaginable. Yet it had happened. Furthermore, it had happened when the Phoenix monarch had already adapted to the situation and obtained the power to stand above this world. If not for the will of heaven and the will of heaven, how could it be like this? Troubled times create heroes. The Phoenix monarch smiled faintly and said, I've always thought that I'm the brightest star in this chaotic world. I thought that everything was within my grasp, that everything and everyone had been accounted for. However, I've forgotten that heaven's luck is something that no wise man can control. I've never thought that the position that heaven's will has given me is only a dark star that serves as a foil to the bright moon. He raised his head and looked at Yun Yang. Supreme Cloud, what do you want to do with the demon race? Yun Yang smiled and said, it's similar to what you're doing, but I'll probably be gentler than you. Besides, I'll redraw the rules of this world. Redraw the rules? The rules of heaven and earth? The Phoenix Monarch's eyes lit up. You've already reached this stage? Yun Yang nodded lightly. Looking at Yun Yang, the Phoenix Monarch's gaze was filled with envy for the first time. After all, what Yun Yang currently possessed was the state that the Phoenix Monarch had dreamed of. The Phoenix Monarch had painstakingly cultivated for more than 40,000 years, yet the other party had obtained it so easily. Not only does heavens will make fools of people, it's extremely unfair. Man proposes, God disposes. I can't even keep up with God's will. The Phoenix Monarch guffawed, his laughter extremely forlorn. Then, his gaze landed on Gigi, his gaze suddenly burning with passion. He did not turn back, only staring at Gigi as he said, Supreme Cloud, do you know that this battle of yours shouldn't have been won so easily? Even if your ability is already above mine, if I were in my peak condition, I might still have the chance to perish together with you. Yun Yang nodded. When I succeeded in my attack just now, I could already feel it. After my breakthrough, I was already confident that I would win this battle, but I didn't expect it to be so easy. Is there anything I've overlooked? The Phoenix Monarch smiled bitterly. Destiny is something that no wise man can control. I'm not blessed by heaven, but you are blessed by heaven, so naturally, you will have endless help. Even the pure-blooded phoenix that I've been yearning for has long become your pet. Not only did it buy time for you when we were entangled, it even devoured more than 11 primordial nirvanic flames. If it wasn't for me being too eager for the phoenix's pure-blooded blood and even coveting it, you might not have been able to break through the final bottleneck in time. Secondly, if I didn't lose the 11 primordial nirvanic flames, this battle wouldn't have been so easy. It's all luck and fate. I'm begging you for one last thing. I hope you'll grant me. Yun Yang was suddenly enlightened. I see. Tell me whatever it is. As long as it's within my capabilities, I'll consider it. Yun Yang had always doubted how he could have won this battle so easily, as if it was a joke. It turned out that a lot of the Phoenix Monarch's primordial nirvanic flames had been devoured by Gigi, causing its ability to be greatly damaged. Yun Yang, who had broken through, had already gained the upper hand over the Phoenix Monarch. The Phoenix Monarch had also lost a lot of its power, causing the disparity in strength to widen. It was not difficult to understand why this battle had ended so hastily. Although this phoenix of yours is a pure-blooded Phoenix Monarch, it's still in its infancy. There's still a long way to go before it's fully grown. The reason why you've obtained it is probably because of an old legend of the ancient Phoenix tribe. This legend says that every generation of the sacred Phoenix needs to find their own protector. The rebirth of the Phoenix requires a protector. Therefore, when a Phoenix egg is born, it has its own path of the Great Tao. And this path of the Great Tao will randomly send the Phoenix to the other side of the universe, to its master or protector. This is probably the reason why it's by your side. As for the sacred Phoenix's protector, he's most likely the chosen one. At the very least, he's still the chosen one. Therefore, no matter what, the growth of the sacred Phoenix will be smooth. Even if its protector dies prematurely and can't reach the other side, that will only happen after the sacred Phoenix has grown to a certain level, which means that it has completed the initial stage of its protector. This is where the innate providence of the pure-blooded Phoenix clan lies. When I confirmed his identity, I already knew that I would fail. However, I still wanted to try my best to fight against the heavens because I've already surpassed the pinnacle of this world. Even if he's the chosen one, I can still kill him. As long as I kill you, I will become this world's chosen one. Even that Phoenix will become mine, food for my mouth. It's a pity that I didn't win the chosen one. This Phoenix of yours will return to its tribe sooner or later after it matures. The Phoenix Monarch looked at Gigi with a burning gaze. I wonder if he can bring me to have a look and fulfill my wish. Fulfill your wish and bring you to have a look. Yun Yang frowned in confusion. The Phoenix Monarch's actual condition was not as safe and sound as it looked. It was on the verge of dying at any time. Due to Yun Yang's high evaluation of the Phoenix Monarch's current combat power and cultivation base, he had exerted his full strength just now. The seemingly casual strike was actually an extreme palm strike that combined the 5 elements of heaven, earth, water, fire, wind, and thunder. It was a solid strike that had destroyed the Phoenix Monarch's soul, internal core, physical body, and deific consciousness. The only reason he could still converse now was because of his last breath of energy. Even if he agreed, how could he go? There's no need to doubt it. The Phoenix Monarch took a deep breath and said, I will use everything I have to help your phoenix grow even faster. And my condition in exchange is to keep a shred of my true spirit. I will only leave behind a meager amount of power to take a look at it. I only ask that I take a look at it to fulfill my long-cherished wish. Yun Yang hesitated. He was obviously worried that his momentary hesitation would leave a future threat. If the Phoenix Monarch really had the chance to keep a sliver of his true spirit and enter Gigi's body, would he eventually possess Gigi when he grew to a certain stage? It was not impossible that Yun Yang was wary of the Phoenix Monarch's skill of cloning and primordial spirit. In fact, it was highly possible. Just as Yun Yang was determined to reject the Phoenix Monarch's last request to avoid future trouble, Gigi flew over and flapped its wings in front of Yun Yang. Gigi. Yun Yang frowned. You mean this is possible? Gigi. Gigi was another long Gigi, as if it was trying to express something urgently. Fortunately, Yun Yang understood it completely. The sacred phoenix's innate spirit fire was an extraordinary flame that was of a higher level than the flame of nirvana or the flame of nirvana. Its mystical properties were secondary, but its inability to be possessed was its unique characteristic. If the Phoenix Monarch was in its most complete state, perhaps it could be destroyed bit by bit, but the sliver of true spirit could not even enter Gigi's subconscious. It would only be dormant in his grasp. When it was time to return to the tribe and activate it with a mystical skill, the last sliver of true spirit of the Phoenix Monarch would appear. However, the Phoenix Monarch who had fulfilled its wish would only have a few breaths left before its energy was depleted and it would perish forever. To Gigi, there was no risk at all. With this as a bargaining chip, it was a profitable venture with endless benefits. The Phoenix Monarch looked at Yun Yang with longing and asked, Can I? I promise you. Since Gigi is willing to fulfill your wish as the person involved, I have no reason to refuse. Yun Yang promised solemnly, if one day, Gigi can return to the tribe, it will bring you back with it. I'll let you see the true face of the sacred Phoenix Monarch and fulfill your wish. When the time comes, if the Phoenix clan has another way to resurrect you, I won't stop you even if it's your destiny. Everything will depend on your luck. The Phoenix Monarch guffawed and said, I believe that when the time comes, you won't take me seriously anymore. Even when the time comes, the entire sacred Phoenix clan won't be in your eyes anymore. Ha! The Phoenix clan flaunts itself, saying that it's a guardian, but in the eyes of you geniuses, it's actually just a pet. That's all. It's just that our positions are different, our standpoints are different, and our positions are different. Each satisfies their own claims. Gigi. Gigi glared at the Phoenix Monarch fiercely, obviously very dissatisfied with his words. The Phoenix Monarch laughed. Then he turned around and looked down, announcing loudly. The war between the human race and the demon race ends here. I've lost, which means that the demon race has lost. From today onwards, the demon race will bow down to the bound of Universe's supreme cloud. From today onwards, the bound of Universe's supreme cloud is the ruler of this continent. He chuckled self-deprecatingly and said to Yun Yang, I don't know how much of what I say now is still useful. However, a bet is a bet, and a loss is a loss. This attitude must be maintained. Yun Yang said sincerely, Actually, I really value you as an opponent, but it's a pity that everything happened too quickly. If it's possible, I'd like to try to fight with you from a young age. From the beginning to the end, I'd like to admire your unparalleled intelligence and unparalleled calculation. The Phoenix Monarch laughed. Even if you're the real supreme wit, you can't beat me, much less supreme cloud. It's a pity that in front of absolute power, intelligence is insignificant. It's not enough. Ha 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 ha. Amidst the laughter, the Phoenix Monarch's body suddenly spun and turned into a blazing flame. In the flame, a small phoenix took a longing look at this world. With a long cry, blood splashed. A sea of blood gathered into a fist-sized drop of golden blood that shone brightly. As the golden blood appeared, a low and ethereal voice said, Brothers, I'm sorry. Although we fought to the death in the end, although Long Yuqian died in my scheme, I truly feel that it's good to be brothers with all of you in these 40,000 years. It's a blessing. Although we're sworn enemies from now on, I still have to say, I'm sorry. The voice was laughing, a sad and forlorn tone. Although, all of you can't hear it anymore. After the low sigh, the ball of golden blood turned into a stream of light and flew slowly towards Gigi. Without hesitation, Gigi swallowed it in one gulp. Then, its entire body ignited in flames as its body grew visibly larger. The essence of the Phoenix Monarch's lifetime, the essence of a lifetime, and the mystical power obtained from the strategy of world annihilation had all been given to Gigi. The flame continued to burn as Gigi collapsed into Yun Yang's embrace. Under everyone's gaze, it turned into a phoenix egg the size of a bowl. After absorbing all of the Phoenix Monarch's energy, Gigi's growth period was greatly shortened, soaring all the way to the phoenix's adulthood stage, rebirth. Yun Yang sighed softly and kept the phoenix egg away. Gigi would probably sleep for a long time after its rebirth. Cheers could be heard below. Victory! Victory! We've won! We've actually won! Countless experts of the demon race stood on the ground, dejected and dispirited. They were still staring blankly at the sky, their eyes filled with disbelief. It was as if they were still searching for their king, hoping that what they had heard just now was just a hallucination. At this moment, the strongest expert of the demon race, the heavily injured Serpent Emperor, quietly returned to his original form. He curled up on the ground and stared at the sky, two streams of tears slowly flowing from his cold eyes. Yun Yang was silent for a moment before he finally landed on the demon race's side. The Deer Emperor and others struggled to stand up as well, transforming into human form and coming before Yun Yang. The remaining 7 kings of the demon race stood in a row. The Deer Emperor was the first to speak. Lord Supreme Cloud of Heaven, how do you plan to treat the demon race? Yun Yang was silent for a moment before he replied, Don't worry, I won't kill all of you. The Deer Emperor took a deep breath and said, We'd like to hear Lord Supreme Cloud's plan. Yun Yang thought about it and said, About this, I'd like to think about it for a while. Of course. Seeing that Yun Yang's attitude was gentle and not extreme, the few kings felt inexplicably at ease. After all, this was the greatest killer who had slaughtered millions with a single slash. When he killed, it was calculated in terms of a radius of thousands of feet. Coupled with his extraordinary cultivation base and combat strength that had easily defeated the Phoenix Emperor, it would not take much effort even if he wanted to annihilate the entire demon race. Being a little weaker now was by no means a shameful thing. After all, it was related to the survival of the entire demon race. Yun Yang did not ponder for too long. After an hour, he soared into the air again, obviously having made up his mind about the follow-up plan. When Yun Yang revealed his power, it could be said that he had elevated his ability to the extreme. When he displayed it in front of everyone, starlight shone all over him. Countless tiny stars seemed to have a life of their own as they glowed in the sky, their radiance dazzling the world. Is there anyone in the celestial court? Yun Yang called out. Before everyone's eyes, a majestic and ethereal palace suddenly appeared in broad daylight. The palace occupied an area of tens of millions of kilometers, and it was impossible to see the end of it with a single glance. It was surrounded by ethereal clouds that were faintly discernible. Following that, a few sage-like silhouettes appeared in midair like they had materialized out of thin air. The one in the lead wore a crown that reached the sky and a purple robe. His expression was stern and solemn as he looked at Yun Yang. What orders do you have for us, Lord Supreme Cloud, to summon us? Is there anyone in the netherworld? Yun Yang hollered again. Before his voice faded away, a cloud of fog appeared on the ground in response. It suddenly rose up, and 3 indistinct figures appeared. If it wasn't King Chujiang, King Qingguang and King Yanluo, who else could it be? Lord Supreme Cloud. It's been a long time. The 3 Yama kings cupped their fists in greeting. They had been watching this battle for a long time, collecting souls from the battlefield all the time. The 3 of them had even decided that if Yun Yang was at a disadvantage and his life was in danger, they would lend a hand even if it was against the rules. Now that the situation was settled, they appeared immediately upon hearing Yun Yang's summon. The other kings of the concourse of the underworld were on their way as well. Yun Yang smiled and cupped his fists in greeting, saying, Today, I've offended the heaven and the netherworld. Be my witness. If the heaven and the netherworld are willing, why don't you consider my suggestion and join us in this grand undertaking? The leader of the celestial palace chuckled and said, as long as it's Lord Supreme Cloud's order, we shall obey it. First Court King Qingguang chortled as well. How dare we disobey Lord Supreme Cloud's order? Dongfeng Haoren and the others were dumbfounded as they witnessed the scene. They were dumbfounded on the spot, at a loss for words. Although they knew that Yunyang had a wide network of contacts and was in contact with people from all walks of life, even having sworn brothers in the demon race, the fact that he could summon the legendary celestial court and the underworld with a loud roar, 2 roars, could not be true. Furthermore, the people from the heaven and the netherworld seemed to know Yunyang. They looked like they had a long history and were willing to listen to Yunyang's orders. Was this real? I wouldn't dare. Yunyang replied humbly and continued, what I want to amend this time is the fundamental law of this world. This requires the heaven and the netherworld to bear witness, and it needs to be carried out. From today onwards, the bound of universe will officially be connected to the demon plane. However, another huge mountain will appear. I call it the Cloudy Mist Mountain. Just like the Crimson Soul Mountain in the past, this Cloudy Mist Mountain will cut off the paths of the demon race, humans, and mystical beasts, splitting it into 3 zones. The middle zone between the 3 zones will be designated as a barren land, shared by the 3 races. All 3 races can enter. From today onwards, the bound of universe's cultivation heavenly rule will be amended. Only with kindness in your heart can you reap the fruits of success. The cycle of cause and effect, good and evil will be rewarded, and karma will not be satisfied. When a martial artist advances, there must be heavenly punishment, rewarding kindness and punishing evil. Those who are entangled in karma will face heavenly punishment, and it will be difficult for them to transcend. This heavenly rule applies to humans, mystical beasts, and the demon race. Be it cultivators or ordinary citizens, they are all included. Do not let them go unjustly. Yunyang listed a total of 7 heavenly rules, and they were called the 7 limits by the later generations. To put it simply, those who did good would naturally be blessed by heaven, and those who did evil would be punished by heaven. As for the cultivation of martial arts, it was also linked to this. When one broke through, there would definitely be retribution for whatever one had done. It could be inner demons, heaven's thunder, or even backlashes. Even if they were to be punished by heaven, they would not be killed with a single strike. Instead, they would be left with some leeway. All the experts, as well as the people from the heaven and hell, listened quietly. These heavenly rules were still biased, and they almost directly said, cannibalism is not allowed. Overall, it was still considered fair and just enough to be open to the public. Even the various emperors of the demon race were very satisfied with this, and did not have any objections. After all, these new rules were much better than the previous ones. As for the demon race eating humans, as long as one was not afraid of the heaven's thunder hanging over one's head, one could try. Leaving one a leeway was only a leeway, and there was still a 99% chance of danger. Martial artists all wished to become stronger, and what was the purpose of becoming stronger? Naturally, it was to better protect themselves and their families, to enjoy life, or to pursue a higher goal. However, the path of a martial artist was filled with tests from heaven, and it was heaven's wrath. If one did whatever one wanted without fear, one would perish under the heaven's thunder sooner or later. Then, what was the point of cultivating for the rest of one's life? Humans were also subject to the same restrictions. As the losing party, what else could the demon race be dissatisfied with? The Sea Tribe, which had suffered an unprecedented loss of power, had completely returned to the demon race. The Sea of Demons was completely moved back to its original position by Yunyang's mystical power. The barren land on the other side of the demon race was moved by Yunyang without restraint, and with the aid of earth and wood elemental powers, the barren land was no longer barren. The land that could support the survival of living beings was much larger than before. At least, for the demon race, who had suffered a similar loss of vitality, the living area had increased exponentially. Then, Yunyang, the Serpent Emperor, the Deer Emperor, Dongfeng Haoren, Python 9, and the others discussed further and added some common understandings between the 3 parties. They shared their mistakes and made up for each other's shortcomings, which made their relationship more harmonious. The celestial court and the underworld were naturally happy to see this happen, and agreed without exception. In the future, these rules would be enforced by the celestial court and the underworld. It was also a brand new heaven's will. As for Yun Yang, he did not need anyone's acknowledgement to know that he was already the bound of universes supreme. Once everything was settled, Yun Yang soared into the sky above the bound of universe and unleashed his earth elemental power, the power of thick earth, to its limit. The ground beneath everyone's feet extended all the way, and a majestic mountain range rose from the ground. The light of thick earth flickered continuously, and in just a moment, the mountain range took shape, forming a huge mountain range that was several times stronger than the mountain of Blood Soul. It was indestructible and indestructible. This continuous mountain range ran through the north, south, west, and east, clearly dividing the entire land into 4 parts. It was a huge triangle. The human race, demon race, and Xian beast each occupied a corner. In the center, surrounded by mountains, it was desolate. It was a wasteland that all humans, demons, and Xian beasts could enter. Some of the quick-witted had already begun to plan in their hearts to build a market here to trade. This was obviously the only place where the specialties of the 3 races circulated. The barren land that looked desolate and had nothing was actually an undeveloped land of treasure. It was foreseeable that every inch of land would be worth a fortune in the future. However, to build a foundation here, one needed to be strong enough. As for strength, everyone thought about it now, they did not seem to be lacking. The ambitious demons had been wiped out in this battle, and the only surviving emperor of the sea had been banished by Yun Yang, never to go out to sea again until his death. At least in a short period of time, the chances of such an ambitious person appearing was extremely low. For those who had committed a lot of sins, not only was there punishment from the heavens, but the underworld had also built the 18 levels of hell and set up thousands of punishments, including the road to the underworld, the bridge of helplessness, and the viewing platform. The celestial court had set up a reception center to treat humans, demons, and mystical beasts who had done good deeds their entire lives. These, however, were things to be discussed later. All in all, the embryonic form of a world with complete rules had been established, and it was gradually being perfected. In the following period of time, Yun Yang would rack his brains to perfect all of this. This was what supremacy of heaven and earth needed to do. Had to do. It was the same for Lord Sovereign who had set up the Heaven's Oath back then, and it was the same for supremacy of heaven and earth now. The Battle of Bloody Soul Mountain had finally come to an end. The demons had returned to lick their wounds, and the humans had also returned to their homes to recuperate. The entire bound of universe was filled with sorrow and joy. The 2 contrasting emotional atmospheres had become the main theme. In this war, the number of deaths on both sides was incomparably high. Adding the 20 billion lives that had been lost when the apocalyptic ploy was activated, the number of casualties was very likely to exceed 30 billion. The 3 heavenly palaces had turned into a sea of white banners. The Fox clan had returned to their original territory and continued to thrive. The Fox clan's crown prince, the 9-tailed jade fox, had also grown up. As the new Fox Emperor, she led the clan to recuperate. The Fox Empress and the Cat Queen had followed Yun Yang to the Palace of the 9 Supremes, following their original intentions. The Fox Emperor and the Cat Ancestor had been completely drained, leaving only a tiny bit of their primordial spirits. Even with the rich spiritual chi of a blessed land like the Palace of 9 Supremes, it would still take a long time for them to recover. But the Fox Empress and Cat Concubine were willing to wait, waiting for the day their lovers returned. Even if they could never recover, they were willing to wait for them for the rest of their lives. After Yun Yang returned, he quickly passed the position of Palace of the 9 Supremes' first Supreme to Xueqi. Xueqi refused to accept it, while the other Demiurge Flawed 10 shook their heads and politely declined. The ultimate war between humans and demons had little to do with them now, so they could only focus on cultivating. Although they knew that the goal was far beyond their reach, they still hoped that they could ascend and leave together when Yun Yang left this world to fight for a new heaven and earth. Yun Xiuxin, Hu Xiaofan, and the others also made it clear that they were not interested in power, let alone participating in the management of the sect. Therefore, after a discussion among the sect, Yun Yang passed the position of sect leader to his 3rd disciple, Sun Mingxiu, with Bai Yexing and Yu Chunghang as his assistants. Then, Yun Yang, Shangguan Lingxiu, Ji Lingxi, and the others cultivated in seclusion for 10 years to stabilize their cultivation base and prepare to step into the void and leave. The Palace of the 9 Supremes had now become a unique super sect, and even the 3 heavenly palaces had to look up to it. Dongfeng Haoran and the others looked at each other and smiled bitterly. So, this was the truth of the disappearance of the position in the ancestors' prophecy. It was a false alarm. Another 10 years later, Yun Yang came out of seclusion as scheduled. After some simple arrangements, he took Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu and soared into the sky. Ling Xiaozue, Dong Qitian, and the others had also broken through the last level of Saint and reached the level of half a step into the starry sky. Everyone was cultivating hard, preparing to officially break through the void and search for Yun Yang. In the bound of universe, another legend was born that would be passed down through the ages. The bound of universe's supreme cloud, the bound of universe's supreme. Ever since the bound of universe came into being, there was no one else who could have Yun Yang's reputation and power. The title of supremacy was well deserved. In order to respect supreme cloud, the later generations removed the term supremacy and supremacy from a martial artist's cultivation base and changed them to immortal mystic and above. Since then, no one dared to call themselves supremacy anymore. This custom had even spread to the human realm. Even the emperors of the human realm addressed themselves as son of heaven or emperor, not daring to call themselves supremacy anymore. Yun Yang broke through the void and left, traveling the universe with his 2 wives. He witnessed the birth and destruction of countless planets, which greatly broadened his experience and broadened his horizons. One day, however, he bumped into a golden-furred monkey who suddenly appeared before Yun Yang and said with a chuckle, "My staff, shouldn't you return it to me?" Although the question was abrupt, Yun Yang knew who the speaker was and what he was referring to. He passed the divine staff of ocean suppression over and said with a smile, "Are you satisfied with how I've been dealt with, senior?" The golden-furred monkey guffawed. "Yes, I am. You're so much better than that fellow with a devilish aura. How you've dealt with it, the demon race that's exiled there will be blessed." He then pinched the back of his head and said with a smile, "I don't have much to give you. I'll just give you 3 strands of monkey fur. They can save your life, ha ha ha." With a flash of golden light, the 3 strands of monkey fur were already on Yun Yang. For a moment, even Yun Yang himself did not know where he had hidden them. The golden-furred monkey, on the other hand, had disappeared amidst the laughter. A few more years passed. It was as if there was only guidance. Yun Yang and the other 2 came to a glorious palace that had been floating in the air for an unknown period of time. The guard in front of the palace door saw Yun Yang and knelt down to greet him without a word. "Young lord is back." Yun Yang was stunned when he heard the greeting. He then realized that this place was probably. A lady dressed in palace attire floated out of the palace and pulled Yun Yang into her embrace. "Xiao Yun, you're finally back. Mother missed you so much." Yun Yang felt a sense of coolness flashing through his mind as he recalled everything at once. The mother and son spoke for a long time before Yun Yang finally asked, "Mother, where's my father?" The lady in white said hatefully, "Your father has made you suffer so much for a bull***T scheme. Why are you still mentioning him? I get angry just thinking about it." Yun Yang pressed for more details. Only then did the lady in white say, "Your father is a bastard. He did such a thing and yet he nagged me every day, explaining endlessly. I was so angry that I drugged him and poisoned him to make him mute for 1,000 years. It's not even time yet." Yun Yang, Ji Lingxi, and Shangguan Lingxiu looked at each other, speechless. "Humph. My good daughter and son-in-law are back." A very unhappy voice suddenly sounded. A middle-aged man with a mustache and a nose that didn't look like a nose or eyes came out, and a tall and sturdy woman followed him. Cough, 5th uncle. Yun Yang was embarrassed. Yun Yang's mother smiled and said, "Don't call him 5th uncle. Just call him father-in-law." The middle-aged man looked displeased. "I haven't even tasted the tea he offered me as a son-in-law. I don't know anything. I've asked him to call me father-in-law all my life." As he spoke, he glanced at Shangguan Lingxiu and realized that he had found another one. How could such a womanizer be worthy of my daughter? Ji Lingxi stared at the middle-aged man. The old and new grudges that had been buried deep within her rose uncontrollably. It was this old man. Back then, her second uncle had proposed marriage to him to be the matchmaker between her and Yun Yang. But this fellow had refused no matter what. In the end, he had lost her in a bet. Then, she had wandered the lower realm for a long time. She had finally fallen in love with Yun Yang, but she could not do that. She had accepted Shangguan Lingxiu helplessly, turning their world of 2 into a threesome. Now, she was still indignant and spouting nonsense here. It was intolerable. Gritting her teeth, Ji Lingxi charged forward and grabbed the mustache, shouting angrily, "You're that bastard father of mine! Take this!" The middle-aged man shouted, "Stop! Stop. What is this? This. Ouch. My mustache. He was already screaming in agony. Yun thought to himself. Well done. If it wasn't unreasonable, I would have done it long ago. Well done, wife. The burly woman and the lady in white exchanged a smile and walked away hand in hand, not minding it at all. Come, let's go in for some tea. Outside, a series of almost incessant cries could be heard. It's time to cure third brother's mute. Even eldest brother has come to plead for mercy. Humph, no, let him be mute for a few more years. Wouldn't it be embarrassing for me to cure him now? The lady in white said hatefully, eldest brother is bewitched by his sister and listens to everything she says. How can I fulfill the wishes of the siblings? Humph. You're right. Still, in-law, let's discuss the child. This has to be done properly. If it's done poorly, won't we become the laughingstock of the world? Yes. I'll call all my sisters over later. Let's have a good time and discuss this matter. All right. The laughter and chatter inside and the cries of pain outside were a delightful contrast. An elegant middle-aged man with a handsome face and a tall figure walked by. His every movement was calm and composed, and his face was filled with confidence as if everything was under his control. He strolled by, smiling at a certain heartless father who was being taught a lesson by his daughter. Without saying a word, he floated away, taking pleasure in the misfortune of his daughter. It's time to find eldest brother for a drink. It's still his good idea. Let's see if eldest brother has any medicine to cure this mute. Otherwise, how can I be a mute when my son is getting married? Still, I have to hide it from my wife. I'm very good at pretending to be mute as well. The middle-aged man drifted away. Somewhere, a man in black and a young man in white were playing chess. Old Black, you're cheating again. Who's cheating? There's no veteran on my chessboard. Shameless. Cut the crap. My sworn brother is getting married. You have to prepare the betrothal gifts. Humph, that's my disciple's husband. Of course I have to go. I'm also the witness. You and my disciple's husband are sworn brothers? Nephew Black, call me uncle. I'll give you some lucky money. Bang bang bang. The two began to fight. The chessboard immediately collapsed and scattered between heaven and earth. In the distance, a young man in black strolled past and shook his head. These two are really boring. Witness? They actually want to snatch it from me. Hee, I have so many brothers. Can you win? He went far away. Chapter 15:27. It's been more than a month since I finished this book. It's a little late. However, there are some things that I need to give everyone an explanation for. I wrote this book with passion at the start. Protecting the country, the 9 Supremes. I was excited when I wrote it. But when did it start? I felt that something wasn't right. This book, in a certain sense, was too high profile. The tone set at the start was too high profile. Just like one day, I argued with a few of my book friends in the chapter. You've been a soldier, but we haven't. We read for fun, but you have to pull us along to shout slogans. We don't feel good about it. Yes, I don't believe that there are unpatriotic people. But my book friends are right, we are all patriotic, but we don't want to read a book and shout slogans. It's not nice. The subscriptions also reminded me that there must be some parts that I did not choose correctly. At that time, the entire book was already formed. Then I thought to change it. Then the website came to me and said, the contract is about to expire, but your word count is still lacking. That made me feel bad. The word count problem is a huge problem. Then, I started to bury the thread in the bound of universe as I changed it. Then, I interfered with the fantasy world. It's a pity that I only made the outline of the Tianxian continent before I started the book. No matter how much I wrote, I could only write 3 million words. It's far from enough. So, the first half is about the country and the world. The second half is purely a martial world fantasy. But with this change, I realized that I made another mistake. Many of my readers who had been reading were unhappy. You're King going to level up and fight monsters when your blood is boiling. I was dumbfounded then. I continued writing. Finally, I finished. However, the biggest mistake was not here. It was Yun Yang's identity. It was revealed too early. Xueqi, Mo Tianji's son? How could he die? How could Fraud Mo let his son die? Therefore, the biggest suspense, the main character's life and death crisis, was no longer felt by the revelation of his identity. A month after I finished writing that paragraph, I came to my senses and slapped myself 7 or 8 times. What were you thinking? Were you an idiot? Many readers responded to me, saying, some of it is boring. This wasn't meaningless. It was because Mo Tianji was too awesome. If it were any other main character, these encounters would be very distressing. However, Yun Yang, who had revealed his identity, could not do so. It was too safe. He was gravely mistaken. He had written it in the most serious manner, but he could never erase the flaws brought about by Yun Yang's identity. This is the biggest failure of the book. Now that I'm done, I'll learn from this painful experience. I won't make such a low-level mistake in my next book. Thank you for your companionship and generosity. If you can't finish writing the free chapters, I'll post them first. Keep writing. Chapter 1528. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for the company and support of this book. The managers are conscientious, and the alliance leaders are selfless. Countless brothers and sisters are silently supporting and subscribing. Sometimes, I silently look at the subscription data and nicknames in the background. Most of them are very familiar. It's like seeing a family. And our Feng family group, after so many years, has indeed been managed by us like a big family. It's full of warmth. If someone has a problem, everyone will solve it together. If someone has a quarrel, a group of people will come up to persuade them. The first thing they say is, "Why are you fighting as a family?" It's very warm. I'm also very satisfied. The Feng family is a big family. I'm very satisfied and gratified to be able to provide such an atmosphere for everyone. However, this atmosphere isn't based on me, but on everyone's joint efforts. The 4 words Feng family are our common name. I like it very much. Everyone likes it very much too. I feel that this is my greatest achievement. My happiest time is when I'm chatting with everyone in the group. Every time I go in, I don't want it to end. The conversation is in full swing. The most unforgettable memory has nothing to do with the book. It's snatching red packets from everyone in the group. I send a red packet myself and immediately go to open it. I can never snatch it. What kind of hand speed is that? No matter how many red packets I send, I can't snatch it. I've always been brooding over this matter. Is my surgery slow? I've already written 30 million words. Is my hand speed that slow? Why can't I snatch red packets? White Shirt said, "Big Wind, you're giving in to us. You deliberately didn't snatch it." I chuckled. Who wouldn't want to snatch it? Anyway, this book, I have a lot of feelings when I write it. However, I made mistakes. This shouldn't be the case. Let's change it for the next book. I believe it won't disappoint everyone. In addition, I want to report to everyone about my physical condition and the progress of my new book. Yes. To be continued. I'll continue writing. If I continue writing on this page, you'll have to spend money. Chapter 1529. After finishing the book, I rested at home for 6 days. My phone was confiscated. Then, I ate and slept like a pig every day. Then, I went to Beijing for surgery. The swollen lymph nodes in my chest were discovered during my physical examination. Compared to last year's physical examination, they were growing faster and not small. I'm a timid person. I cut them off immediately. A leader in Beijing contacted the hospital. He wanted to tell everyone, but I didn't let him. I was hospitalized for 7 days and started to work on my wrist. My wrist was in pain. After writing for a long time, it was sore and swollen. I couldn't find the cause. In this hospital, an old doctor looked at my wrist and said that there was no problem with the examination. The X-ray was normal. How did this happen? Carpal tunnel syndrome didn't seem like it. I said that I had been treating it as carpal tunnel syndrome. In the end, the old doctor said that it wasn't carpal tunnel syndrome. After struggling for a long time, I finally decided to cut it open. I was the one who requested it. I said that there must be a problem. I would know once I cut it open. It couldn't be that everything was normal but the pain was unbearable. Then, I finally found out what was going on. There was a piece of bone fragment the size of a needle tip in the big tendon of my wrist. It had been so long that it had grown together. The old doctor said to me while performing the surgery. I said that your wrist must have been seriously injured before. You said that it wasn't. I said that it was injured before, but I am sure that my wrist was definitely not broken. The old doctor chuckled. But I really didn't break it. How did the bone fragment appear? I found it strange too. Did I transmigrate? He took it out and pinched it with 2 of his fingers. He brought it to his nose and sniffed it. It smelled weird. That was the general situation. I only got my phone back 10 days ago. Before that, I was restricted to rest my wrist and chest. Cough cough. Now that my wrist was fine, I still couldn't do any heavy work. I couldn't work for too long. I still needed to rest. I was very happy with this suggestion because I could finally be a master at home. Let me work. No, my chest, my wrist. Cough cough. While my body was gradually recovering, my brain was not idle. Next, I would like to talk about the new book. After I rest for a while, the new book would start. The idea for the new book had been conceived. As long as my wrist allowed it, I could start. But I had to rest well. Otherwise, it would easily cause new problems. Next book. High martial fantasy. Moreover, the main character of the new book is someone who doesn't walk the normal path. Thinking about the main character's character, I felt a little impatient. To tell the truth, if it wasn't for my health, I would have written quite a lot by now. Although they are all unfinished drafts, and there are still some key settings that I haven't thought of, I feel that I have already written them to my heart's content. At the very least, it made me feel good. I believe that you won't be disappointed. Once everything was confirmed, he would meet with everyone. Let's stop here. Happy New Year to everyone in advance. My wife made dumplings, so I had to go eat them. My status in the family was high now, and I could eat whatever I wanted. It was the standard treatment of a master. It was great. Bring me the water to wash my feet. Come and rub my back. Why did you cook this dish? It's too salty. Faded. What's the matter with you? Can't you see that I'm picking up girls? Go to the side. Ha ha ha, brothers and sisters. Goodbye. Time to eat dumplings. Chapter 1530. Brothers and sisters, please come and lend me a hand. I Am the Supreme Being's new book, Heresy Tilting the Heavens, has been released. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update.